Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Tuesday, the 23rd of June, I believe it is. Ask your prayers this day for all of the Anglican clergy, chaplains, and lay people who are gathered in Ottawa and I believe on Zoom to elect the Bishop Ordinary for the Canadian Anglican members of the Armed Forces. The election is today. There are 6 people being considered and prayerfully voted for. So it's Janine Friesen, Jennifer Goss, Brad Smith, Jim McCorriston, Sean Sampson, and Robert Parker. So God's will be done. I am in Ottawa when you're watching this. When I'm recording this, I'm actually in the PA, at the hotel in the PA, and up there for executive committee and a day of discernment and vocational discernment, and some work we're doing, and then heading back and then flying off to Ottawa. So times they are flying by, and who knows what today will hold. So please pray that God's will be done, and should Rob be elected, he will have the strength he needs to do as God is calling him to do. And if he should not be elected, that he will understand and recognize the work that God is calling him to do elsewhere. So thank you for your prayers. Today, I just want to talk a little bit about detours. And some of you may have heard that about a week and a half ago, we had some significant rain in sort of mid-level Manitoba. And one of the places that got washed out was Swan River. People having to sandbag for their homes. Also places like Minitonis, all areas around there. I was supposed to have been at Swan River a week ago for their Sunday service, but we canceled that because the folks had other things on their minds. And apparently I wouldn't have been able to get into Swan River except unless I went through Saskatchewan, which is our neighboring province to the west. But today, or last week, I'm recording this the day I got to the PA, but when we drove up to the PA, Cheryl and I, we had to take Highway 83, which is a different route, adds about 20 minutes to drive, 45 minutes. Um, and parts of the road where we were traveling had to be detoured because the road is still washed out. But the beautiful thing about detours is makes you have to slow down. And there's a bit of a joke that the Siri, or the person inside my computer, when I'm using my GPS, knows how much I like dirt roads. And almost every time I punch in a new location, they Siri ends up taking me along dirt roads, and I love it. And other people don't. If they're driving with me, they're like, "Why do we have to do this?" But I adore dirt roads because it makes you slow down. And usually, dirt roads take you to vistas you haven't seen, like farmers' fields or mountaintops and things like that. And the reality is that sometimes we choose to take a detour, we choose to go a different way. Sometimes we make a mistake and we end up taking a detour. And sometimes life itself says you must take a detour. The road ahead of you is washed out. You must get to where you're going via a different route. Now, with GPS and things like Google Maps, it makes it easy to figure out how to get there. But we don't always have those resources. We don't always have something telling us this is the way to go. Sometimes the detour happens because we get as far as we can go before we realize the road before us has been washed out and we have to turn around. And then we have decisions we have to make. Do we sit there and try to figure out how do we jump the washed out road, which we know in our heart of hearts is not safe, that we need to turn around? Because often in our lives, the metaphorical washed out roads are, I think, God's way of saying to us, this isn't the way you're supposed to go. Turn around. Think of a different way. But the idea being that we have to take time, we have to slow down. Sometimes we have to completely turn around. Sometimes we even have to go right back to where we started so we can start from a different place. But because when we come across these detours, whether they're ones that make us go back to where we started and start from a different place, or they simply make us slow down and take a different route, sometimes we might find a shortcut. But most times we find ourselves having to think about things a little bit differently, having to plan things a little differently, having to consider things from a different perspective. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes those are the very detours that help us to make the best decisions we've ever made. Or sometimes those detours are the things that keep us from making the worst decisions we've ever made. Detours can be beautiful. They don't always have to involve gravel roads, but I've always found that the detours I take that lead me on a gravel road are the ones that make me feel closest to home. You see, my home is where God is. And where God is, I often find easier to see when I can see green grass, or fields of wheat, or butterflies flitting through the leaves of the trees, where I can see the sun shining in the blue sky and the white fluffy clouds, or the heavy, heavy, dark sky with the big heavy clouds in that little bit of light that glows off the gold canola fields. There's something about a detour that makes us have to slow down, look at where we're going, consider where we've been, and recognize that maybe God has other plans, and maybe those other plans aren't bad after all. So if you're having in your life, if you're finding yourself on a detour, or you're facing one or coming up to one, don't panic, don't worry. Allow yourself to recognize that sometimes detours are God's way of saying, I have a different story to share with you. I have some new ideas, some new possibilities. Take the time and follow me, and you might be absolutely thrilled with where we end up. May the detours of your life be things that help you feel absolutely thrilled about where you end up. I know the detours in my life have brought me to some pretty interesting places. Have a great day. God bless you. And I'll see you again tomorrow for Church at Home with Rachel.